Hey there, welcome back to the Smell of Logic channel. I am Ramona, and today's little Reddit stories are going to be, have you ever had a religious or mystical experience, and what was it like? Here we go, ready? A subtle but strong sense of connection to something else, like often a specific sense that I was in the presence of a certain specific individual God, and often accompanied by a euphoric sense of awe, coupled with calm and peace that lasted long after this experience, that I can almost click back into by meditating on those experiences at times. I look at life as though it's breaking the seals of revelation. It wasn't like anything I practice transcendental meditation. The deepest, most spiritual state during TM is where one ceases to be aware of anything at all, even while the brain remains alert, described thusly by the founder of, I'm not going to read all of it, sorry. The state has distinct physiological correlates, but you can't actually be aware of the state, only the transition back to normal awareness. Okay, I'm not going to go on with all of that. You do you, boo. Several times before I became an atheist, I had significant personal experiences of being led by the Spirit. I could tell by the fruit of making myself open to God. I was able to help others in significant ways, like repairing damaged relationships, guiding others back to the faith with scripture led by the Spirit. Too many instances to count, but there was this one week that was particularly powerful. Things culminated in softening me to do something I had been avoiding. It was good times. I have, but I don't want to get hate messages for saying it. Well, that's fair. I had run away from home at 17 due to abuse, and about a year later, just before my 18th birthday, I was at an uncle's house who was like a family friend. Over dinner, he told me how my mother still loved me, but it went in one ear and out the other. Later that night, however, I was chatting with my friend on MSN Messenger at around 10:30 p.m. when all of a sudden the words, "Your mother still loves you," flashed in my mind's eye for a split second. I didn't have a second to think or respond to it when a giant wave of emotion just came right over me. It was like a giant funnel had opened up over my head, and all the love of the universe was being poured right through it, into my body. This love flowed from my head and to the rest of my body, straight through my fingers and toes. I couldn't stop crying for half an hour. Everything seemed golden. I remember typing to my likely confused friend, "Yo, Carl, life is beautiful, man. Life is beautiful." I ended up passing out soon after, but I remember thinking that it all must have been a dream. But the next morning, my entire body was different. Every single cell felt renewed. I suddenly felt the absence of 50 pounds, a 50-pound boulder I hadn't even realized that I was carrying my whole life. My body felt so light and free that I got up and just took a few steps. I was sure that I could fly. 2 days later, on Saturday night, I went out with my friends to celebrate my birthday. I did ecstasy and ketamine, but outside the nightclub, I felt this protective bubble surrounding me, and a voice telling me to fight the effects of the drug. I also began experiencing a download of heavenly data, as if my mind were being reprogrammed with higher blueprints. So, after the nightclub, we went back to our usual hangout spot, and I couldn't stop trying to tell my friends all this information. But they thought I was nuts and started smoking away from me. At that moment, I realized the path that we had been going on was a path of death and destruction. I've always known a few young guys killed as a consequence of this lifestyle in the short time that I'd been living outside. I realized I was being given a way out and a new way forward. My feeling of this experience was that I had experienced the foundational premise for all of existence, and that was love. A sudden feeling of wanting only to live for God overwhelmed me one time during prayer. It felt like doing anything else other than obeying God's will was pointless. It felt pretty difficult. It's pretty difficult to explain. It lasted for about half a day and then gradually disappeared the next morning. I never felt anything similar to it since then. I got visions for 5 years, every October. I was given knowledge and wisdom. It came in the form of when I could read the Bible, the passages would change, and I would look back at that verse later on and realize that the phrase wasn't originally there. That stopped about 2 years ago. The tingling of my crown chakra while I was half asleep. It happened only once and never again, but it did allow me to understand God a lot more afterwards. First one I had was a 3-minute I don't know what that word is, vision of various symbology loosely associated with different religions. I didn't put much stock into the visuals themselves, but the feeling afterward was an uplifting sense of connection with all, following that I had multiple others that lasted up to 45 minutes. I've also had vivid visions before sleep of scenes and auditory experiences of languages I don't know. I think the most significant experiences I've had have been relatively recent. I already communed with the spirits through meditation, but as I reached out more and more, I kept encountering this barrier. Like a veil. A few years ago, I was able to pass through the veil and found myself in the spirit world, going into a complete trance. From there, I've gone on to experience many things. I am still learning to walk the spirit world, but I have met deities within it, which were incredibly powerful experiences. It's taken more of a focus in my practice as a result. I've had a few. Not all were the same. Some are subtle promptings and witnesses and insights. Some are powerful. When I was 14 years old and ready to just give in, God overwhelmed me with his unimaginable love and forgiveness. I hadn't experienced forgiveness before, but I recognized it when the time came. Sometimes the Holy Spirit fills us, body and spirit, with a burning witness of truth. Seek God and experience him for yourself. Never. This was an argument religious people made in my country. People will remain spiritual. They are wrong. Dutch people are soulless materialists. Every time I make a right choice when it's hard is a religious experience that brings me closer to God. I had a feeling to continue down a certain street as a missionary. Last door on the street, I had an opportunity to be there for someone in one of the worst times of their life. I prayed with them that night, and it led us to meeting with them for several months. We're now good friends. God led me to that person to do what he does for us. Service, love, compassion, challenging to overcome sin. This is a very religious experience that has let me know there is a true and living God. Whether or not I want to believe in him doesn't really change that he's there and has a correct nature. I've met a goddess before during deep meditation. During it, I felt like I was in two places at once. One place was in her domain, another was in my bed meditating. It felt like my soul was wandering around while my body remained. As I met her, she told me to sit, and she sat next to me. We talked for a bit, and she said she had other things to attend to. When I finally came back to, I was in awe of what I saw. A woman so unbelievably beautiful and wise. She was breathtaking. Every time I have meditated, called upon her, thought of her, talked to her, and prayed to her, I have gotten this wave of energy, which ultimately ends in me being emotional. One night, during a very bad day, I was extremely depressed. I was ready to end my life. I couldn't get a word out during all the tears and emotions I felt. I begged her to just let me die and let me join her. During that moment, I heard a voice whisper something in my ear in a language I didn't understand, but I immediately calmed down and felt her embrace me. I fell into a light trance where an incredibly vivid scene played out in my mind's eye. A 50-foot tall being of pure fire, think a Balrog, but beautiful, appeared in front of me and said, "Behold me in my glory." And I felt like it wanted me to worship it. I think about it for a second and decide I know God alone is worthy of worship. So I start praising God and figure if this being in front of me is God, he can receive it. As I sing along, the being gets smaller and smaller until I realize he's the size of a lighter flame. I then look up to the sky, as I'm indoors, and see the sun shining in its glory. A moment of reflection later, I realize this being in front of me is Satan and is trying to get worship it doesn't deserve, as his whole thing. I have them all the time. This morning, as I lit the candles to my gods and was praying to them, I felt them stand right in front of me. My whole body was tingling with energy in their presence. Wiccans, as a general statement, have a very mystical and personal religion, so we all have these sorts of experiences as the divine, often. I had multiple experiences in the past. Once, as a teenager, I wake up from sleep and suddenly, totally unexpected for me, after sitting on the edge of the bed, I experienced an entirely different reality that is hard to describe. Imagine an infinite space, completely lit by a golden light without any limitation. In this space, transparent pages flew past my perception everywhere, written in a rather geometrical script, which I should see very sharp and precise, but still not possible to describe exactly. A script unknown to me. With this writing came information that I immediately grasped intuitively rather than intellectually. This flow of information had no end, so that from this point of time I felt like I could no longer grasp any information further. It was like a headache. But as soon as I became aware of this feeling, this moment I was back again in usual reality, sitting on the edge of my bed in my room with no headache at all, and also no other further effects. Simply like nothing had happened. I wasn't aware at the time, but I don't think time should have been passed during this whole experience. I can remember before falling asleep reflecting somehow about the idea in a whole spiritual template for Holy Scriptures, which brought the desire in me to read it out loud, read it out of curiosity. And since I have unshakable faith in one God, it may be that I turn to God in prayer about this. Anyhow, this experience was a lesson for me realizing human limitations. This happened about 30 years ago when there were phone booths. Winter, next to a noisy highway. Went into a phone booth to make a call. Door faced outward, abutting the sidewalk. Finishing the call, I hung up, turned around to exit, and at that precise moment when I was going to step outside on the sidewalk, 2 hands, one on each shoulder from behind, physically held me back. At that very moment, a sidewalk-sized snowplow buzzed past the phone booth. Couldn't hear it due to the noise from the highway. Had I stepped outside, I would surely have been killed or seriously injured. Firm and strong while also gentle, the hands disappeared as quickly as they had appeared. I experienced a vision of a woman made of pink and blue light, and she said without moving her lips, "I have come in a form you will know." She filled me with an incredible love, and then she left. I believe this to be the Creator. When I was praying to another goddess and lit a candle for her, I suddenly saw her symbol being emitted from the light of the flame. I am still trying to understand why. I was doing a thought experiment about what would happen if my fiancé died. I felt like I needed to prepare for the possibility now, while she was sitting next to me, while I was so happy and content, because if I needed to deal with it in the moment, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to deal with the loss. As I began, I quickly progressed to the thought of, I love her like I love myself, and at that moment everything went white. I became white light, which I knew to be love, and also what we all were. The illusion that she and I were separate human beings disappeared, and I knew that everyone is actually at their core this pure white love light. It all made sense, the songs, the poetry, the Hallmark cards. I've sort of learned since then that I entered into a form of samadhi because I was essentially meditating on her, and I broke down the barriers between her being and mine. My reward was to be given a glimpse of God, Atman, the source, whatever you want to call it. It was love, and that's what we all are. That's actually a really beautiful sentiment. So I'm going to end the video there. I hope you have enjoyed listening to this, listening and watching my little images there. But if you like this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to comment, I'd certainly welcome, some comments down there. If you liked this video, you like my channel, share it with somebody else that might enjoy some of these. There's plenty of videos on the channel. Go help them out. If you want to chill out and you need stress relief, I release coloring books, one every week right now, always on Mondays. They're available on Amazon.com. I try to keep them as low as possible because I know times are tight and money's tight everywhere, but I don't really make anything off of them. I just enjoy making them. I enjoy creating them. It's therapeutic for me to create coloring books, so that's what I do. But go check it out. There's a lot of stuff over on my Amazon authors page. That's all the shilling I'm going to do right now. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.